Guys, quick plug before we get into today's video. One of my frequent commenters on the channel, Tawdry Hepburn, has a Kickstarter project, and I always like to do anything I can to help out subscribers and people who hang out in the comment section. So check out the link in the description for VIRGIL, their short supernatural film. They're very close to their backers, so check it out. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program, and today, real shocker, we're doing a video on Castle Grayskull, so turn the page when you hear the beep. Beep. So, Castle Grayskull has been the goal of Skeletor for the whole series. In fact, even if you Google what is Skeletor's goal, it just tells you that his goal is to conquer the castle of mystery and power that is Castle Grayskull. But why? Why in the world does Skeletor want this old castle that's, faded with time, that's covered in ivy and muck and, looks all, evil? Actually, though, before we get to diving into that, one quick pet peeve I have, something that kind of drives me up the wall is when people misspell it. It is G-R-A-Y, skull, not E-Y. It's right there on the box, people. G-R-A-Y. Okay, with that out of the way. So ever since the very beginning of the brand, Skeletor's goal has always been to get inside of Castle Grayskull, or to conquer it. Originally, the concept was sort of capture the flag, not necessarily sit on the throne. You can see the link to the video here about that. That was changed with Filmation, but Skeletor has always, he's declared, Castle Grayskull will be mine! I can't do it as well as Dan Milano. All right, so what is it? Why isn't he doing it? Is it just because Skeletor is not a nice guy? Is he a villain? Is it because Castle Grayskull is prime real estate and he wants to make it his vacation home with Evil Lyn? Well, it is a lot deeper than that, and the idea of battling for Castle Grayskull means we need to do a little toy history. So let's dive in. So whatever the iteration of Castle Grayskull is, whether it's fan art, it's play sets, its animation, it's always represented the MacGuffin of the brand. The idea that this is the thing, the object that everyone is trying to get. Sort of like the Ark of the Covenant, or whatever it was Kylo Ren was trying to get in the last Star Wars movie. It's the thing that propels the plot forward. And Skeletor's goal of breaking into the castle essentially sets him up as your classic antagonist, with He-Man there to protect the castle and not let anyone inside, especially Skeletor. So why is it that, He-Man needs to protect this castle? I mean, there's obviously plenty of other castles that Skeletor can get. He has his own castle, right? He's got Snake Mountain, so it's not like he's looking for a home. He already has a roof over his head. Well, a lot of the episodes do show that there's a huge, enormous amount of power inside the castle. And this comes from two things. One is the Orb of Power, which gets included with quite a few of the Castle Grayskull playsets, including the Mega Block set and the Masters of the Universe Classics version sold on Matty Collector. So what is this orb? Well, the actual orb as a toy was sold with King Grayskull in Masters of the Universe Classics as a way to entice you to buy him again. And you could even get a stand with the Temple of Darkness Sorceress if you didn't have the full castle playset that also came with a small stand. So the orb is the raw creation energy that swept across the universe at the beginning of time, creating everything. And the overlords of Tralla, that's Orko's people, took that energy and infused it into a sword for protection. And they gave that sword to a great warrior. And eventually, through the generations, the great warrior, Hero, became the guardian of the sword of He being the Trollan word for power. And so the sword was basically made up of all of this cosmic energy of creation. Hero passed the sword on to King Grayskull upon his death, and then King Grayskull drained the energy from the sword and put it into an orb because he thought it was too dangerous to have it, on his person at all times. So the energy, the creation of the universe energy, went into the sword, and then now out of a sword, into an orb that could be hidden inside of Castle Grayskull to protect it. And that's what the sorceress and all of her descendants and predecessors had been doing. Think of the orb as essentially raw power. It was the power that created the universe, that swept through it. It's like a giant, like a battery, more or less. And because the power was once in the sword, it can connect with the Sword of He, kind of wirelessly, if you think about it. And that's how He-Man is able to do his transformation. He's wirelessly through the sword connecting to the orb. All right, so the orb is power. The other object, sort of inside Castle Grayskull, is the Star Seed. So the Star Seed is from a Filmation episode called The Golden Discs of Knowledge. And while the plot is, well, a little convoluted with Zodak showing up, essentially it establishes that in the center of the planet of Eternia, the Star Seed resides, and it is the source of all magical energy. And it's guarded by Procrustes, but you can see the path straight up from Procrustes to Castle Grayskull there. So Castle Grayskull represents an access point to gain the power of the Star Seed, which is in the center of the planet. And the Star Seed is essentially magic. It's unlimited magical power. So you have the Orb of Power, which is raw power, just strength, and then the Star Seed is magic. So combining the Star Seed with the Orb, you basically have unlimited power of magic. And with both of these inside or accessible through the castle, hence unlimited power could be yours if you can take the castle and gain both of these objects. But the castle represents more than just, things to collect. It's not just a fetch quest in a video game. Wanting to take the castle, well, for Skeletor, it's more of his birthright. And let's kind of explain that, because a lot of people ask, is it Skeletor's castle? Well, it's not just because, he's cackling in front of it in the beginning of Filmation, or the fact that Rudy Obrero thought that it was his castle, which is why he put Skeletor in the drawbridge on the Chateau d'Ombres. That's French for Castle of Shadows, what it's called in France. Okay, it's called Castle Grayskull. But he put him there, guarding the castle in all of his early art, because he assumed the castle belonged to Skeletor because it had a skull face. So he just assumed it was Skeletor's castle. Well, it kind of is Skeletor's castle, and let's explain that. And that really ties into who Skeletor is and his secret origin. And I've done quite a few videos on this. You can see a link here to more of Skeletor's origin. But it goes back to the fact that Skeletor was once Keldor, the firstborn prince of Eternia. And Keldor and Randor fought in a battle called the Great Unrest. Think of it as kind of like the Clone Wars with Anakin and Obi-Wan. If, Star Wars, like Luke, was the main story, this is like the backstory. And during the Great Unrest, Keldor witnesses his father being thrown into a interdimensional portal and being thrown into Despondos, leaving Randor and Keldor in charge of the kingdom. Now, with Miro gone, Keldor should be king as the firstborn. But when Randor's mother is killed, and Randor and Keldor had different mothers, Keldor is a Gar, or at least a half Gar, it's assumed that Keldor killed the queen, and for that murder, Randor is forced to banish Keldor from Eternos Palace. Now, this is a very, very key event, because Randor, whether or not Keldor killed the Queen Mother, the crowd outside the palace is convinced he did, and part of that is because of prejudice against the Gar race. That's a video for another time. So Randor, by banishing his brother, is actually saving his life, because otherwise the crowd is going to want his head. Keldor doesn't see it this way, and so the same event is essentially interpreted by both brothers from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
So Randor's banishment of Keldor is to save Keldor, but Keldor sees it as him being his birthright being stolen from him. So they both, see the event very differently. Randor thinks he's doing a good thing by saving his brother's life, by banishing him, and of course Keldor is now full of anger that his birthright's been stolen and seeks out Hordak to learn dark magic and the secret of, gaining greater power so that he could take his throne back. That's his whole motivation. So when Keldor eventually becomes Skeletor, video for another time. The reason that, he wants to, take Castle Grayskull and take measurements of it there and move in is because, well, Eternia should be his. When he's always saying, Castle Grayskull will be mine, or Eternia will be mine, it should be his. He's the firstborn, and he does, rightly so, feel like his birthright was stolen from him. And that's why he gathers the evil warriors to take back Eternia. And however you play out Masters of the Universe, remember that, Keldor is kind of in the right. Skeletor is a villain that absolutely is justified in his behavior. Hope you enjoyed this video and it clarified why Castle Grayskull is everyone's goal, especially Skeletor's. Like it, share it, leave comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.